Welcome, everyone, to Healing Trauma, Building Resilience Under Fire. Today, we are meeting and coming together to confront a challenge that often remains invisible, but is deeply felt: the silent mental health crisis that is gripping so many Israelis. As Israel battles on multiple fronts, the psychological toll of living under constant conflict, compounded by the alarming rise in global anti-Semitism, is leaving lasting scars on individuals and communities alike. This is not just a challenge, and a daily one at that we face. It is a call to action. We are honored to have with us two esteemed guest speakers, Mr. Hillel Fuld, a renowned tech columnist and passionate advocate for Israel, and Dr. Brom, the founding director of Metiv, the Israel Psychotrauma Center, who brings decades of expertise in trauma and resilience. Together, we will explore not only the effects of these challenges, but more importantly, how we can build resilience, offer support, and stand in solidarity with those enduring these struggles. Thank you for being here, for your commitment and your healing and hope. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Brom, a distinguished clinical psychologist and the founding director of Metiv, the Israel Psychotrauma Center. Dr. Brom is a globally recognized expert in trauma and resilience, having dedicated his career to enhancing the capacity of communities and professionals to cope with the challenges posed by terrorism and disaster. With a rich background in both clinical practice and research, Dr. Brom has significantly contributed to the field through his work in Israel and internationally, including providing crucial support in the aftermath of events such as 9/11 and natural disasters around the globe. He is also a prolific author and educator, having published extensively on trauma and resilience. Dr. Brom, it is a pleasure having you join us.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here.
I think we'd like to start the session with a little bit of overview and impact. And one of the questions that came up is, what has been the most significant change in the mental health landscape in Israel since the events of October 7th?
So I think the best way to look at that is to also, in a very brief way, to look at where we come from. Because actually I came from Holland, the Netherlands, in 1988. And when I came here, I had already established a trauma center over there and came here to find the field of trauma very neglected and people saying, we don't see trauma here. And so I've been trying to make the field alive here by bringing all kinds of people from different countries to teach here. And now, since October 7th, something strange seems to happen, because now it seems to be that people say everyone is traumatized, everyone needs treatment, all soldiers are post-traumatic. So coming from a sort of denial point of view, we now went into almost the opposite, an exaggeration of the field, and saying that everyone who is going through this situation now has post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's a problem. So what we're seeing now is that everyone is, of course, very worried. We are in a very difficult situation with people still in Gaza, and lots of, our kids or grandkids in fighting units in Gaza and up north. So everyone is really worried. But the most important thing to understand is actually that, when you are in such a situation, you get into what I call survival mode. And that is a very interesting and important hardware, something we have in our bodies. Trauma and survival does something to our brain and to the body. Um, and so people then feeling very tense think, oh, there's something wrong with me. And no, actually, there's something right with you if you are stressed out about the situation, if you're worried about the soldiers, if you have a nightmare during the night. That is more a sign of health than it is of a problem in mental health. And we don't seem to realize that enough. When you feel in existential danger, then a number of things change. One of these things is, of course, how we are looking for signs of danger. And then the fight and flight and freeze response come up, which is only one part of survival mode. The other thing we see, and people also know very well, is that when you feel in danger, your attachment pattern really changes. United we stand was the slogan after 9/11. But here also, Biyachad Ninatseach, together we will overcome, is a very natural process of attaching to other people in order to feel safe. And that's a very strong thing. We see that in the work we do with IDF soldiers to help them also after their service to get out of survival mode, because basically no one tells you how to do that. So that is another part of survival mode. And another thing is that during a real danger, your feelings go to the side, your thoughts go to the side. You do exactly what is necessary in order to survive. And also during survival mode, your patterns of learning are very different. Things get imprinted in your mind. And so all of these changes are natural and protect us. But then after things calm down, then you have to bring things together again. If during an accident, or during combat, you don't feel a lot, doesn't mean that there are no feelings behind somewhere. And then you have to integrate it. And that goes by re-experiencing and by, sometimes avoiding and sometimes speaking about it and feeling the tension in the body. And then letting that go is a big challenge for people, because we always feel that, our body should not feel anything or should be relaxed, which is not natural in this situation.
When you mentioned survival mode, it brings up the original topic that we've been talking about with trauma. And I'm curious about the interplay between survival mode and trauma. And so it also brings me into the question of, can you please provide a working definition of the term survival mode and the working definition of trauma and the ramifications of the way they play out? And what can happen if intervention and treatment is not provided or received?
So, yeah, trauma comes from the Greek language, and it's basically a wound. When something foreign makes a hole in your skin. And that, I think, is a very interesting metaphor for what happens when you are in danger or when you go through something shocking. Then basically you feel injured. And, when you have a wound, in your body somewhere, you don't go to a doctor in general. You clean up the wound, and then you know it'll heal by itself. And that is a very important way to look at it, because mostly people don't need not counseling, not therapy. They know if they let it go, how to deal with it. It's a very natural process. Survival mode is the response, like when you have a wound in your skin, it hurts. So that is also a healthy sign something is wrong. Like after shocking experiences, you have to recover. And at this moment, there seems to be almost a frenzy about everyone needs services. And we know from research that that is not the case. There's only a minority that really develops full-fledged post-traumatic stress disorder or depression or anxiety. That is not the majority that develops those psychopathological issues. So it's becoming more and more important to give also messages of coping and strength, and not assume that anyone who goes through a shocking experience needs therapy. It's very important that services like Avnegen are available for people, and very often people know if they need treatment. When people call and say, I need something, then probably they know. But at this moment, I'm a bit worried about the general atmosphere that says, oh, everyone needs treatment. That is not a message that strengthens people. That's a message that says, if you feel something, you might have to be worried that you're developing something serious. In our work with soldiers, 2 weeks ago, I saw a group of soldiers, and a few of them said, my biggest fear is that I will have PTSD. And that is not really necessary. Among soldiers, combat soldiers, about 10 to 15%. That's of course a lot of people, but it also means 85 to 90% who will be okay. And it's important to know that all of that is in the body. And if you let the body do the work, find a safe place, find safe people, and when you need to talk about it, it's important that people listen. But it's also okay if sometimes you want to just be in silence or just be alone. Sometimes that is also healing. So being able to accept that in our society and give people the support they need, but not necessarily all need psychotherapy.
Yeah. You know, what I'm hearing from you is a message of resilience, and that a human being intrinsically has capabilities and potential for resilience. And at the same time, there are people who truly do need the extra support and the extra intervention. So I actually would like to segue a little bit into that population before we get into the broader population. And maybe you could provide an overview of the types of, let's say, mental health issues that have become more prevalent in Israel now, in the Israeli population since October 7th. What trends have been observed in the demand for mental health services, whether it's because of maybe, as you're mentioning, fear of developing PTSD, but it might also be therapy, counseling, and then it might be people with already pre-existing mental health conditions, such as depression, anxiety, even bipolar, and people who've really needed the mental health support system since before October 7th and sort of the implications that go along with that.
Yeah. On the one hand, of course, in this situation, the demand for services goes up, but also there's a lot of people who now, like in Metiv, since October 7th, we've seen 3,000 people, mental health professionals, who came to us for consultation, for courses, for really learning how to treat trauma. And so there is also a lot of people out there that are organizing help. There's a lot of new amutot, NGOs, that provide all kinds of services. So basically, I feel that as a state, we are organizing itself ourselves, and that is sorry, um, and so that'll take time. There are some people who say, "Oh, just wait until all of this is over, and then it'll be terrible." Uh, um, there will be, for some people, long-term consequences. For some people, having gone through this will create a situation that if ever they go through some difficult things again, it might reawaken this. And for those people, it's important that effective services are being given. Now, trauma therapy is not like any therapy. It means that you really need to be able to hear about the bad things that do happen, and the things that people have seen, the things that people have heard, the things that people have smelled. All the senses become very sharp when you are in danger. So we have to know these kinds of things in order to help people get out and process their experience, get out of survival mode and process their experiences. The first thing that is necessary for that is a safe and warm environment. I get a lot of questions from fathers and mothers whose children are in the army. And they call me and say, he's coming back this Friday for Shabbat. What should I do? And I asked them, well, you know how to be a warm parent, right? And they say, yeah, of course. Well, that's what they need. That is exactly what they need. They need the sense of normality in a family. That is what will allow them to relax, to start talking if it's possible, or prepare themselves to go back on Sunday. It is nothing that you need to learn. It is just being a good parent and a loving parent. And sometimes people forget that. And they think, a specialist will tell me what to do. And, there's so many good parents and good enough parents. And we have to feel that and just be that. And not think that we need to do something very different.
So digging in deep within oneself for the natural capabilities that we have as humans to provide warmth, love, care, support, that goes a very long way into building resilience, not only in our children, but in ourselves as a community and as a country.
Exactly. Now, resilience, in my view, is not a very clear term. it's something like we know it when we see it, but we don't know really how to define it. But if you can focus on what's happening in the body and you can focus on your breathing without needing to breathe differently, but just be aware of what happens in the body when you yourself are coming down from being very tense or feeling bad. That in itself is helpful. We know that. So I I always also propagate um, moving the body. If it's walking, if it's dancing, if it is sports or whatever, but really giving our body the message, um, we know that the body can do this. There's
So integrating the body in resilience is very key.
Yeah, the body, we know now that also the body in trauma treatment is extremely important. The classical therapy of, talking, 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 we know can be even problematic if you don't take care of soothing the body, finding a way that the body can just be and a person can be aware of what's happening in the body. And that is a very important message, also for therapists, but also for the general population. Let the body do the work is one of the statements of um, a therapist in the United States, Peter Levine, who developed an approach called somatic experiencing. And it's a very natural method that basically there's nothing special you need to do. Just be and then see what happens. And then things come up, and sometimes it creates a feeling of stress or tension in the body. And if you let that go, then see what happens next. And that is where we want people to be and not be afraid of, oh, I'm stressed. No, that's a very natural response.
So basically meeting stress and meeting sort of the emotional and experiential pieces with an attunement that's really focused inward. So that a person is aware and attuned to what they're experiencing has a very therapeutic effect, um, and possibly even more benefit um, than a traditional psychotherapy for this type of challenge at traumatic events
Yeah.
or high stress incidents such as what has happened on October 7th.
And also for children, we know it's crucial that parents learn to regulate themselves first. And when they can calm themselves down, almost automatically, their children will join into that. And also the other way around, if people cannot calm themselves, you will see children also who will develop all kinds of unwanted behaviors. If you think about smaller children, they might become withdrawn or they might become clinging. And if we go up in age, if you think about adolescents, when they can't regulate themselves, they might go into risk-taking behavior. Because as we hear from adolescents, if just being at home can be dangerous because of missiles, then I can also do other things that are dangerous. And I don't care. It sort of fits the feeling in the body to do that. So for all of that is the self-regulation, the bodily regulation, but also the relationship. We know what people need in order to cope with trauma is just another person. And just being with another person in itself, just looking someone in the eyes, if it's a safe person, that in itself regulates, helps regulation.
So not being alone has a huge impact on how a person can process potentially traumatic events or traumatic events really influences greatly in their ability to go forward and create a better, healthy mental health state.
Yeah, just being with other people is enormously important. And it's also, again, a natural survival mechanism of people to want to be together. So we can use those natural tendencies of people to help them or for themselves to find help in, if it's in the neighborhood or if it's, when you have people who are alone, live alone, can you invite them in and can you be pro-social, which that's the interesting thing. It doesn't only help that person, it helps us. Helping other people is a wonderful way to help ourselves.
What if somebody has difficulty, and you mentioned the self-regulation even for parents and being able to be pro-social, but people are finding it very challenging to do that independently. They don't have somebody that is their safe person or place. They might be filled with some shame or embarrassment or some other type of hesitation. How would you suggest that they proceed? Like, what resources are there within Israel to help them acquire the tools to be able to be partnering in their own self healing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, of how do you find something that fits you? Uh, um, and even if people come to services like Avnechen or to Metiv, there's always the question, does the person you meet fit what you need? Uh, um, and there's also all kinds of applications on cell phones, on computers that can help with relaxation exercises, um, fantasy exercises, all kinds of things that basically can help bring your activation down so that it's easier to carry it. Of course, it doesn't change our reality, unfortunately. I wish there was an application that could do that. But then we go more into maybe the need for prayer, and the application will not do that for us. Thank God.
How does a person know when it's time to reach out to a professional for help?
So, yeah, how does someone know when you need more help? If you basically feel that your situation is only getting worse, and you feel that it's going in the wrong way. Many years ago, we did a lot of work in schools uh, up north, and we were always asking about symptoms of children and things like all extensive questionnaires. But then someone came up and says, maybe we'll ask them, do you think you need help? And that was a genius question because the people who say yes, you can trust that. And the people, especially adolescents, when they say, maybe that would be a yes. But a lot of, and the majority said, I don't think so. And you can trust that also. So people can ask themselves these very simple questions. Do I feel I need help? And what kind of help do I need? And mental health professionals are certainly not the only ones who can help. Also, people, certainly Rabbanim or people in the neighborhood. There's a lot of things that we don't define as help. But as far as I understand, Avnei is exactly that broad framework of help that doesn't define what you need to suffer from in order to turn to you, but it's just an invitation in a broad way to um, to just come and say what you need. And I think that is a very valuable and important way to do things.
And also touches on the piece where you mentioned not being alone, having somebody partnering, that it's figuring out what the right modality. It might be therapy, it might not be. But whatever it is, it's having somebody to partner with. I think to wrap up, one more question is, what is your vision and message regarding mental health and trauma recovery in Israel?
Well, I'll tell you, of course, the first thing that needs to happen for our mental health is that we will not be in war. But that doesn't seem to be in our hands. The next thing, and what my passion has been in my career, is finding the most effective methods for healing. And that is an ongoing process. We also have to know that therapy for civilians who went through trauma is much more effective than therapy for people who fought in a war and have been over extensive periods in severe danger. And that is why we are really looking forward to two pieces of research now. One is on somatic experiencing for veterans, and another is a second line of treatment. We need to, because all therapies work for some people and for others it doesn't. And what do you do then? How do you create a system of care that doesn't say after someone has done therapy and it wasn't successful, then go and look for something else. But I'm really into creating a system, especially at this moment, for children and for soldiers. If you need something, then as service providers, we need to be responsible and say, if something doesn't work, what is the next stage? And for example, we have this MDMA-assisted treatment, psychedelic treatment, that we are now doing in the frame of research in order to see that you don't let people fall between the cracks. If one thing doesn't work, let's think of what else we can do, and let's not just do therapies on and on and on and on if it doesn't work. That is also a challenge. How do you finish a treatment if it's not successful? These are all questions for all of us. And it takes a lot of integrity to be able to say that something doesn't work, let's think further.
So what I'm hearing in that message is that there's a continuation, there's hope in Israel for teams, research, Metiv, other mental health organizations, partnering with an organization like Avnei Chaim in order to keep saying, well, if this isn't working, not let's just keep doing it. It's the question, that growth mindset, what else? And to keep
Exactly.
going forward and to partner and to use creativity and to use collaboration, both on a professional level, both on a community level, so that there is resilience and hope going forward.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And I think that's what the beauty is of Avnei Chaim. It's the beautiful stones that we need in order to see beauty and experience beauty, and at the same time be strong and not break.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brom. We so appreciate your time, and I really, truly enjoyed the experience to hear from your wisdom and your experience.
Thank you very much.
Challenges and significant increase in mental health crisis. Israel is concurrently experiencing an overload of demand for mental health services, as current resources are being stretched to the limit. Trauma, along with longer waiting times for services, as well as staff shortages due to the war, have added complexity to an already very complex system. Avnei Chaim provides guidance, support, and helps create a pathway forward for individuals and their families. Please join us to hear a message about what Avnei Chaim does, followed by a presentation from Mr. Hillel Fuld.
Mental health challenges in Israel were already at crisis levels, with many suffering in silence, lost, and unable to find a way forward on their own. But now, we are facing a silent war that no one is talking about, and we need your help to fight it. The mental health crisis in Israel has erupted since October 7th. The trauma is real. That's why Avnei Chaim's mission is more urgent than ever before. From the very first call for help, they provide life-saving, individualized support. Navigating every roadblock, they provide the comforting warmth of trusted care. Whatever it takes to help families overcome daunting mental health challenges, Avnei Chaim is there. Empowering people to secure the support they need, they ensure no one faces the system alone. Their work is vital for securing a healthy future for Am Yisrael as a nation. Let's not be silent. Let's stand united, supporting our nation's well-being during this painful time. Donate now and help Avnei Chaim uphold Israel's historic legacy of overcoming challenges and building resilience under fire.
Honored to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Hillel Fuld, a global speaker and tech advisor who has earned the title of Israel's top marketer. Hillel is renowned for his work with leading tech entrepreneurs, investors, and visionaries, helping them transform ideas into thriving ventures. Beyond his success in the tech world, Hillel is also a passionate advocate for Israel and the Jewish people, as well as mental health awareness, and has invested much of his time and energy to the cause. We are privileged to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Hillel Fuld.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the warm intro, and more importantly, I appreciate the incredible work that Avnei Chaim is doing in such an important field right now that not enough people are dealing with. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I really just want to start with something that occurred to me a few minutes before I came here, before I sat in front of my computer, and I was thinking to myself, over the years, I often post my thoughts from the Torah portion, weekly Torah portion, specifically with lessons for leadership and maybe entrepreneurship. But I always find somehow that there's a relevant message in the Torah portion. And I thought to myself, what can I learn from this week's Torah portion or from this past week's Torah portion? And it really is unbelievable. And this isn't necessarily a religious message. It's just mind-boggling. The portion that we're going to read next week is Kitetse, when you go out to war. That's literally the topic of the portion. But I want to talk a little bit for a second about last week's portion, where we talk about who does not go out to war. And it is mind-boggling because it says a few different types of people that are exempt from war. One is if you built a house, but you haven't lived in that house yet. Another one is if you got engaged to a woman, but you didn't marry her yet, you don't go to war. But then the Torah says something super strange. It says, Mi ha'ish hayarei, who is the man that is fearful, v'rach halivav, and his heart is soft, yelech v'yashov leveito, go back home. What does that mean? It means a man, a soldier who is scared, who has anxiety, who is unable to perform in the battlefield and will potentially bring other soldiers down with him. The Torah says, go home. It's okay. You don't have to fight. And we understand, the Torah says, I understand, God says, I understand the real phenomenon called anxiety. This was obviously written thousands of years ago before we had modern, therapy, and we understood what anxiety was. And it's just really mind-boggling to me that the Torah kind of gives it a stamp of approval, saying, yes, anxiety is a very real thing. While we have made humongous progress in the world of mental health, I think that in many places and in many societies, it's still stigmatized and it's still not taken as seriously as it should be taken. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's mind-boggling. That's what the Torah mentions in this last week's portion. So I guess I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, and then we'll just jump in because there's a lot of things I want to cover in a short period of time. My name is Hillel Fuld. I'm from New York originally, been in Israel for 30 years. Came here when I was a kid, when I was 15 with my family. Not an easy age by any means to come in the middle of high school. At the time, I did not know what hit me. But now 30 years later, I can tell you it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Over the last 15 years or so, I've been working in the tech ecosystem. As I'm sure many of you know, Israel is a technology superpower, and I was really fortunate to get to meet some of the most remarkable people in the world over the last 15 years, and really built myself a consulting business, helping tech companies of all sizes, take their idea and turn it into revenue and turn it into a business. And that was really, I felt like I was a kid in a candy store, and the expression that they say, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, that was pretty much written about me because I literally just loved what I was doing every day and it never felt like work. October 7th changed that all, changed everything for me, just like it changed for many of you. For me, I had never had more clarity what I needed to do. And what I needed to do was shut down my business. And I needed to focus on Israel now. I needed to use the platforms that I built over the last 15 years on social media and other things to defend Israel. And so since October 7th, I've been focused on a mission that has basically two components. First one is being a source of reliable information as close to real time as possible. So I obviously am very careful what I post and what I don't post, and try to verify that it's true before sharing anything. And I'm proud to say that with very few exceptions, I've been successful at that. And then the second portion of my mission, I would say, is more inward. And this is obviously more relevant to this discussion, which is giving our team, quote unquote, a reason to get up in the morning, right? A reason to have some hope and some optimism, because we really, and when I say we, I mean basically everyone in Israel and beyond. I think the Jewish people are experiencing, a dark period, the likes of which I have never experienced, nor do I think any of us imagine we would experience in our lifetime. It's tragic and it's sad and it's really devastating. But in parallel to the physical military battlefield, there are other battles going on. And that is one, for example, the digital battlefield, but then there's the mental health battlefield. And I think, unfortunately, not enough attention is being paid to that battlefield, to making sure that our mental health now and in the future, for sure after the war, but even now, people say we're so in it, it's tough to focus on other things, but we must focus on our mental health because, it is obviously incredibly important for all of us to try to remain as resilient as possible. For me, my tactic to stay as mentally healthy as possible is I do something on social media that I've never done before. And I'll tell you a quick story. Many, many years ago, I had met with Ben Shapiro and I asked him a question. I said, Ben, how do you handle all the hate that you get? Every time you tweet something, you get 10,000, hate messages. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, you think I read those things? I said, well, you don't read them? What do you mean? He said, I tweet and I mute. I don't read the replies. And I said, why? He said, you think I can handle all that hate? So I remember thinking to myself back then, well, that's kind of silly. That defeats the purpose. Social media is supposed to be social. You're supposed to interact with people. And I, at the time, thought that was crazy. But now in the war, that's what I do. I tweet and I mute. And I do that for my mental sanity because I cannot, possibly contain all of the hate that I get on the internet. And by the way, it's not only on social media. I get it by email. I get it in all directions. I got to be honest. it doesn't make me happy that I can't read the replies to my tweets. I would love to engage with people. So I do go in once in a while and kind of, read the replies and see if I missed anything. But when I do that, I'm reminded why I mute my tweets, because there is a lot of hatred out there, unfortunately, for the Jewish people. And so I, again, for my mental health, I try not to read that stuff, but obviously, it seeps in. And furthermore, I lost my brother to terror 6 years ago. We're coming up on 6 years in a month. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But, when one experiences such deep trauma, the word trauma is thrown around a lot, right? I'm traumatized, but it has real, symptoms. It has very real symptoms. And one of those is something that I experienced, which I got to be honest, scared the heck out of me, which is selective memory or selective amnesia. I'm not sure what it's called, but basically blocking out huge kind of parts of your life because you were so traumatized. And, I remember the day that Ari was murdered. It was a Sunday morning, and he was shopping for his family. I was at a startup's office, and I turned on Israeli news just to kind of see what's going on. And I saw that there was a terrorist attack in Efrat where Ari lived. And there was, of course, a surveillance video on the news. And what do you do when you sit in front of a news website and see a big play button? You click play. And so that's what I did. And so I watched this video of this Arab kid coming behind this big dude and stabbing him in the neck. And this big dude then ran after this terrorist after he was stabbed. And right before this terrorist was about to kill his next victim, this big dude, who was my brother, shot him. And then my brother collapsed and died. He has since become a national hero of the state of Israel because he literally saved a woman in his last breath. A woman who had just given the terrorist lunch, by the way, who had a falafel stand there and had just served him lunch, not knowing obviously that he's a terrorist. Ari saved her life in his last breath. She has since become a part of the family. But that morning, I remember everything. I remember what socks I was wearing. I remember everything. If you'd asked me what I did the next day, I have complete blackout. If you told me that I went to the Bahamas, I'd believe you. I have zero recollection, which is terrifying, if I'm being totally honest. But when people ask me, when you found out about October 7th, what was your initial reaction? And my answer is, I don't know. What do I mean by that? I mean that, like many of us, I was in synagogue and there were rumors, the rumors were all over the place. And I was telling my neighbors and friends, stop spreading hysteria. There's no way 3,000 terrorists march into Israel. It's not possible. Stop spreading these rumors. It's going to cause hysteria. And I remember that. Point where we were hearing the rumors. I also remember October 8th shutting down my business. I absolutely do not remember the moment that I turned on my phone and read what happened. Complete blackout. I don't remember it at all. And again, that's because I am deeply traumatized, from what happened with my brother. But the truth is that every time there's a terrorist attack of any kind, for sure, when it's a stabbing attack, it triggers me horribly. And it brings me back to that day. Now, of course, I'm in therapy and I'm doing what I can do. And, I just, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I couldn't even say those words without being embarrassed. I'm in therapy. But I don't think that that's embarrassing today. In fact, one might say it's kind of the trendy thing to do, right? Everyone's talking about their therapist. And so I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm in therapy. I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm taking meds when I need them. And, the bottom line is that it's a very real thing. It's a very real trauma. And people need to know that it's not just an empty word that doesn't mean anything. It means something, and it means something very real. So bottom line is I wanted to kind of share with you some of my thoughts about this topic. And I want to start off by saying something very simplistic, but maybe the most important thing that I'm going to say in this entire talk. And that is, it's okay to not be okay. And I just want to stick to that for 1 second and just stay with that because, all of us, we're all not okay. None of us are okay. But we kind of feel like maybe I should be okay. I have to be strong, for my kids, for my parents, for my friends. I have to show strength, and I can't show that I'm not okay. It's okay to not be okay. In fact, in our situation, given the level of just, I don't even know, devastation, I think it would be weird if you were okay. I think we all are not okay. Again, there's different levels, but we have to embrace it. We have to embrace it because we, as anyone knows, you don't have to be a therapist to know that if you don't, embrace or step up to your pain and you try to avoid it, it's going to come back and bite you. So we need to, first of all, own up to the fact that it's okay to not be okay because none of us are okay. I want to share a quick story with you, and that is that after my brother was murdered, a stranger appeared at my house on a Friday afternoon and handed me a book called Option B. Option B is a book written by Sheryl Sandberg, who was the COO of Facebook and whose husband just dropped dead one day at the gym on the treadmill, just dropped dead. And she wrote this book called Option B. And basically the book is you have two options. You can either drown in mourning and, just not get yourself out of it, or you can live life. No one's saying to ignore the pain. No one's saying to sweep it, but you have to continue on. And so the book is about how to continue on. And it's an amazing book that I highly recommend everyone read. But I want to focus on one tiny little thing that Cheryl mentions in the book that was probably the thing that most resonated with me. And I think that before I tell you what that is, I think, a question of how do you talk to someone when they had just lost a loved one, or, they're experiencing whatever they're experiencing. Someone dies, someone is in a car accident, whatever it may be. How do you even talk to that person? Obviously asking the question, hey, how are you? Seems like such a trivial thing to you and I. That's the way we talk. But when someone's, deep in mourning and trauma, and you ask them how they are, it's a really rough question for them, because on the one hand, they're not okay. But what are they going to start, drowning you in all their sorrows? So they don't even know how to answer that question. And I'm speaking from experience. So in the book, Sheryl Sandberg says something unbelievable. She said people were calling her and saying, Cheryl, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And she said, don't ask me. I can't make any decisions now. Don't ask me what you can do. And she said one person called her and said, Cheryl, what don't you want on your hamburger? Now that seems like a funny question to ask. What don't you want on your hamburger? But it was actually brilliant, because what they were saying is, I'm not asking you what you want for lunch. I'm getting you a hamburger. Just tell me what you don't want on it. And again, she mentioned it as like a tiny little thing in the book. I doubt you would even remember that she wrote it in the book, but it hit home for me so much, because again, when you're deep in trauma, the last thing you can do right now is make decisions. You can't make decisions. So if you're not going to, do something for someone, then don't ask them to make decisions. Don't ask them questions like, how are you? And, I could talk about that topic of what to say, what not to say for hours, something that, we're not going to get into this, but something that many people say is God only gives you, tests that you can pass, which I understand why that person said that to me. I understand that they meant well, but at the time when you're, suffering and you're in this deep state of trauma, you don't want to hear that, because you feel like, I can't handle this. What do you mean? God gave me this because I can handle it? I'm not handling this. So, again, you have to be very sensitive to what you say and what you don't say. And honestly, if you don't know what to say, maybe don't say anything at all, because it really could cause more damage than good. As far as mental health is concerned, I think one of the biggest problems is that if you look at regular medicine, right, you cut your hand or whatever, you have some sort of physical health issue. You go to a doctor, they give you the medicine that you need, they take care of it, and you're good. Mental health is so trial and error. It's so, all right, let's see, take this medicine, come back in 8 weeks. The last thing that you need when you're, in deep depression or anxiety or whatever is to be someone's guinea pig. And, it's a personalized medicine is a big issue, but I think the first step really is the destigmatization, right? People need to stop thinking about this as, there's something wrong with this person because he or she is depressed, or he or she has anxiety, or even, things like bipolar. I think it's our jobs to try to normalize this, because we all know the numbers, right? I mean, this is absolutely a normal quote unquote thing, right? The numbers, 1 out of every 2 Americans, I think, are influenced or affected by mental health. That doesn't mean they have mental health. Somebody in their family does. It's pretty widespread, to the point that I think we have to start normalizing it, because the worst thing that a person wants to feel when they're dealing with trauma or dealing with depression is that I'm not normal, that I'm alone. Whereas if they feel like it's okay to not be okay, I think that's the first step, that maybe the most important step to getting help. And so I think the most important thing that we can do, and that obviously Avnei Chen is doing and many organizations are doing, is trying to focus on, it's okay. It's okay. Let's deal with the problem. Don't worry about it. It's normal. Everything's fine. Let's work on it, as opposed to what's wrong with you, right? It wasn't that long ago when I was growing up, when many of you were growing up, it was like, mental health was like what's wrong with that person, right? That needs to stop. And, another thing that I think is very interesting to pay attention to is that, again, given the level of devastation here in Israel, we also have to come up with some out of the box thinking here, because I think it's safe to say, maybe a slight exaggeration, but I think it's pretty close and pretty accurate to say that this entire country is going to experience some level of trauma, or is experiencing some level of trauma, but will for sure, find themselves in a deep state of maybe PTSD or other things after this war is over. And we're not going to send the entire country, or maybe even the entire Jewish nation, to do therapy, right? I mean, that's not a scalable or sustainable or an effective solution. And so we really do have to come up with some creative thoughts here and some creative solutions because it's a real problem. And I know that I've spoken to many, many people whose expertise is psychedelic treatment, and I know that the government is seriously looking into this. I don't have much more information to share about that, but what I do know is obviously, pretty confidential, but it's being talked about because we can't just, address this as if it's one person dealing with trauma. This is an entire nation. And so, like I said, the government dealing with it, the country and us as individuals, we need to seriously think about how we're going to address this in our close circles, in our families, and our friends, and which leads me to another point, and that is that many of us, and I get this question probably 10 times a day from people saying to me, "What can I do?" Right? I'm in America or wherever I am. It doesn't matter. I'm in Israel. It doesn't make a difference. I'm okay. I'm okay now, and I want to help. What can I do? And there are many things or many potential things that you can do. Right? Some people fight on the ground in Gaza. Right? Some people fight the digital war. Right? But I'm not, here to talk about social media, but I do want to just say one thing, and it's very important because it's a very, very common misconception that many of us feel helpless, right? We have this Facebook account with, 20 of our friends and followers, right, who are, close friends. And what's the point of me posting on my social media? I mean, it's just my echo chamber, right? We've all heard that. I just want to say one thing about that because it's extremely important, and that is that whoever made up that urban legend was simply being dishonest because that's not how it works. When you share something on your Facebook, even if you have one friend and that thing that you shared is impactful and it's meaningful and it's authentic, that person shares it, you just exited your echo chamber. And so we should all understand that we have a megaphone, the likes of which we've never had, at our fingertips. And we should use that. If we're not fighting for Israel on the digital and the physical military battlefield, then we can fight on the digital battlefield. But if we can't do that, then let's fight on the mental health battlefield. And that is just pick up the phone, call people that you're worried about, see how they're doing. And this, by the way, we had great training for this, during COVID, right? I mean, COVID, one of the horrible kind of outcomes and consequences of COVID was just people feeling extremely lonely and alone. Many elderly people or single people were alone at home for months on end. And so, if you could call someone or meet someone, give them a hug, tell them we'll be okay. Don't underestimate that because that is something that is equally, maybe even more important than the other battlefields. And so if you can't do anything else, then do that. Pick up the phone, speak to your friends, speak to your family, check in, and just make sure that everybody is coping as best as they can, right? We've all experienced this, right? We're talking to friends. This is how the conversations start for the last, 6 months. Conversations start. How are you? I mean, I know how you are. Like, how do you even start a conversation now, given the circumstances we find ourselves? So this is uncharted territory, right? There's no user guide here. There's no blueprint on how to do this. We're all learning on the job. But again, the most important thing I think that we all can do is, first of all, embrace it. Embrace it in ourselves, embrace it in our friends and our family, and say, yeah, we're all dealing with this in different levels. And, the flame is stronger for me than for someone else. It doesn't make a difference. We're all dealing with it. Some people have anxiety, some people have depression, some people, whatever. We all are dealing with this really dark period in our time, in our life. And we have to own up to it, right? We have to admit it to ourselves, and then we can start talking about how to handle it. But, the October 7th, the events of October 7th and the war are really, in a completely mind-bending way, they're only the beginning of the trauma that we're experiencing, because the anti-Semitism, even though, again, logically, you'd think after what they did to us on October 7th, the world would stand by us. But it wasn't even October 8th when the anti-Semitism started to spike around the world, which is mind-boggling, but that's the reality we live in. And we can't ignore it, right? And unfortunately, without getting into this topic too much, unfortunately, many of my friends around the world are ignoring it. They don't want to admit it, right? They don't want to look at the data. They don't want to look at the numbers. And I tell them, listen, I'm not judging anybody, for not picking up and coming to Israel. I'm not belittling the challenges. I'm not dismissing, how hard that is. But unfortunately, we do need to look at what's going on around us, and it's not going to get better. And I don't mean to sound like, hysterical here or to scare anyone, but we know that history repeats itself, and it's time to look at history and see what's about to happen. Now, I'll tell you all the good news. Okay. The good news is that we know how this ends, and it ends well. And let me be clear before I continue what I mean by that. I do not mean in any way, shape, or form that this pain is going to go away, or that we'll forget it, or that we're going to forget the people who lost their lives in this war or on October 7th. That is never going to go away. But the reality is, as hard as it is to see now, and it's very hard to see right now, and I have to tell myself this 100 times a day, the reality is that the Jewish people have defied logic and nature. And we are here in 2024, and we celebrate days like Purim. And, I don't know about you guys, but I never really sat and thought about that, really like deeply thought about that. I mean, we celebrate Purim, we get dressed up, we drink, we eat, we celebrate. It's a great time, one of the happiest days of the year. Did you stop to think for 1 second what Purim was? Because Purim, one might say, was infinitely darker than October 7th. We're talking about the leader of the world, a king of 127 countries who agreed to annihilate the Jews. We were at the end. We were done. We didn't have the IDF. We were done. And here we are celebrating, right? And Hanukkah, we were not winning that war. It was game over. And here we are celebrating. And Pesach, 210 years of backbreaking slavery, just horrible persecution. And here we are celebrating. And so again, if I had told you in the time of Purim, one day we will celebrate, you would have stopped talking to me. You would have said that is the most insensitive thing you could possibly, how could you say that, right? And that's how we all feel now. How could I say that one day we're going to celebrate? It's hard to imagine. But the reality is that we will celebrate. We will dance again. Now, again, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Every single life that we lose is an entire world. And again, you don't have to tell me about that. I know, I experienced it. But it is important, again, for our mental health, both as individuals and collectively, that we take a step back and try to look at this from more of a macro perspective, right? My father likes to say something that is actually unbelievable. He says that there has never been a 76-year period in the history of the Jewish people, listen to this, in which so few Jews have been killed. I'm going to let you digest that for 1 second. There's never been a 76-year period in the history of the Jewish people since the destruction of the temple in which so few Jews have been killed. Now, again, every person that we lose in this war, not only Jew, every person, every innocent life is an entire world. We also have to realize that we've never had it this good. That's a horrible thing to say right now. How could Hillel say that? We have to look, we have to take a step back. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our sanity to realize we're going to get through this. We're going to win this. What was will not be. Our enemies will be no more. We will not have threats on our borders. Begs the question, what were we thinking in the first place? But that's a whole different topic. There will be no threat on our borders, and we will dance again. And I want to say something else, and that is that we all know, sing, and love the phrase Am Yisrael Chai. Everyone's heard the phrase Am Yisrael Chai. And again, I didn't really sit and think about that phrase too much, other than the literal translation of Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael is alive. But maybe we should think about that. What does that mean, Am Yisrael, that Jewish people are alive? It means that's not just an empty phrase. Am Yisrael Chai is a historical reality. Okay. And if you don't believe me, pick up your phone and call and look for the number on your phone for your friend who's from Babylonia. All right. Or find your friend from Assyria or any of the, of these empires who tried to annihilate. They're all gone. They're all gone. And here we are, this tiny little nation, right? That makes a tiny, tiny little speck on the map and a tiny little percentage of the global population. And we are here and they are gone. And that's what Am Yisrael Chai means. It means that we will be here. We will win this. We will forever remember our people and our sons and daughters and the horrible atrocities of that day and the war that followed. That's not going anywhere. But we as the Jewish people, we are resilient beyond nature. It is supernatural. It really is supernatural. And that's what's going to happen here as well. We're going to defeat these evil enemies, and we will be here long after they're gone. And for now, just on a kind of individual level, we all have to, again, first of all, remind ourselves that it's okay to not be okay. We have to look around us and see who might be suffering around us and just, put out a hand and give them a hug or ask how they're doing or what, maybe, if you see someone suffering, don't ask them how they're doing, just assume they're not doing well and, speak to them. Maybe even don't speak, maybe just listen. Someone once said you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that ratio. Listening is a very powerful thing that people underestimate. I think that's true in life and that's true in business. But again, topic for another time. But I think that the most important thing we can all do right now is not lie to ourselves. It's time. We have to admit it. We are all in deep devastation. Some of us in deeper, some of us less deep, and we have to get through this. We have to win this war on all fronts, and we really have to, think about our future again as individuals, as families, as societies, as a nation, and for that to be a fruitful, positive future, we really need to take our mental health very, very seriously. And I guess I'll just end with saying that I've known Avnei Chen for a very, very long time. I've known the team for a very long time, and they're doing incredible work. That's the real truth. And when people say to me, what can I do to help? Or I want to donate to Israel and to a meaningful cause. Yes, there are many, many meaningful causes, many. Unfortunately, I don't think that the ones with the deep pockets, if I'm going to be a little straightforward, I don't think that the mental health issue is on their radar. I think they think, donating another pair of boots to an IDF soldier or whatever it is, all, by the way, of which are extremely important missions that should not be belittled. I don't think enough people are talking about how to support the world of mental health. And it's been said before here on the Zoom and the presentations that the mental health world in Israel pre-October 7th was a very, very difficult thing to navigate. That's obviously magnified tenfold now, given just the demand, right? And so I think it's extremely important that if someone's looking to support Israel in a meaningful way, in a very real way, I think supporting this organization, could be extremely beneficial, again, to the state of Israel, to the nation of Israel, to all of us. And I just want to say that I am, proud and honored to be a friend of the organization, honored to be here talking to you on behalf of the organization. And if you're looking to help and support Israel, then this is an amazing, amazing organization for you to support in any way that you can. By the way, in any way that you can. And I don't know. I would imagine that no check is too small, right? I think that anything that goes into this organization will be used directly to helping someone overcome their mental health challenges as a result of this war. So thank you all for listening. I hope that I wasn't maybe too personal, too vulnerable. I just kind of wanted to share with you my experience with trauma. I'm doing my best to get past it. And if I can be helpful to anybody who's here listening or watching and you want an ear or maybe advice on how I am coping, I'm happy for you to shoot me an email or a message or whatever it is. I'm happy for the team to give you my email. And yeah, let's just remember one thing. Am Yisrael Chai is a real historical reality, and we will dance again. No question whatsoever. We will dance again. Thank you very much.
Buddy, I'm Saul Jakubowicz. I'm the executive director of Avnei Chen. I'm one of the co-founders with our other amazing founders. I'm here just to summarize the evening and end it. I had a whole speech written, but basically what Hillel just said was perfect. There's nothing more I can add to that. I'm still going to add to it, but I feel like whatever he said now was perfect, and this really should have been the end of the evening. Hillel, thank you so much for speaking from the heart. You questioned if it was too personal. It was not too personal. I call it authentic, brave. It was brave. It's good for us to hear the bravery of people like you. And basically all the Jewish people. I think we're all brave going through this situation. And I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank Jenny Kranis for hosting the evening, for emceeing it for us, for her wonderful interview, and for Dr. Brom for his wonderful insights, really, really helpful, insightful things. I'd also like to thank the team, if I could just take 10 seconds to thank the team who put this all together. Behind the scenes, they worked like crazy, and you guys did a great job. So thank you very much for pulling this off for us. I'd just like to say that Avnei Chen, translated in English, many of you probably know this, means gemstones or precious stones. The symbolism applies not just to the people we help, but to our team and to our volunteers, many of whom are here in attendance tonight. By the way, I don't have the official numbers, but I've gotten a message during the evening that there was over 600 people in attendance. which is, first of all, a credit to our organizers who organize it, and again, to the issue, to the need for people to talk about mental health in Israel. So that's also proof in the pudding of how necessary these kind of discussions are. What many people don't realize about Avnei Chen is that the name Avnei Chen, the first word Avnei, is the Roshei Tevot of Irgun Briut Nefesh B'Yisrael, the Organization for Mental Health in Israel. This is our name. This is what we're all about. Dr. Brom, just a few minutes ago, or half hour ago, spoke about helping people. And he said something I had never heard before. He talked about helping people in various situations by being pro-social. He used the term pro-social, which I was not familiar with, I'll be honest. So I looked it up. I looked up the definition, and this is what I found. Just reading it here. Pro-social behavior is defined as voluntary behavior intended to benefit another person. It is characterized by acts of kindness, compassion, and helping behaviors, which many consider to be one of the finest qualities of human nature. That definition I found on Science Direct. So this concept that Dr. Brom spoke about perfectly aligns with Avnei Chen and our mandate, which is broadly to help people in crisis. And by helping, we mean by delivering instructive, intensive, guided, and results-driven case management, with the goal of ensuring that people get from crisis to stability and then be able to sustain that stability and live independently. Now, admittedly, that's a very tall order. I'm proud to say that our amazing team of professionals and volunteers has, for the most part, consistently accomplished these goals. But I'm even more proud that we have accomplished these goals with kindness, compassion, and helping behaviors perfectly in line with the definition of pro-social behavior that I just learned about a few minutes ago. Starting tonight, we are launching Avnei Chen's crowdfunding campaign. This campaign will raise the funding we require to deliver our services and increase our services, which are in demand exponentially more than ever before. Hillel Fuld, just a few minutes ago, he talked about the need for out-of-the-box thinking, that we need to do something more creative. We need to do something differently. It's a different war. The war has made things different. I'm proud to say that Avnei Chen was created 4 years ago, and I'm proud to say that I think this is the answer to that out-of-the-box thinking. I think this is the antidote that was given before the illness came, before this makkah, this very difficult situation came. I think the antidote was given, and that is our process and our model for dealing with mental health. Can't talk about it right now. It's too long to talk about, but I believe, in short, Avnei Chen's model is the creative, out-of-the-box solution that Hillel Fuld may have been talking about. Anyway, we need the funding to provide our services. We've been blessed with an awesome group of dedicated volunteers, supporters, and friends of the organization who already understand the indescribable benefits of Avnei Chen. I would like to invite any of you who may now be motivated, having heard the words tonight of Hillel Fuld, of Dr. Brom, or of Jenny Kranis, anyone who's been inspired in any way, to please join us in our crowdfunding journey. I'd just like to end right now by quoting some more words of Dr. Brom, heard here tonight. He said about being pro-social, it doesn't only help that person when you're pro-social. It helps us. It helps ourselves. Helping other people is a wonderful way to help ourselves. What a fantastic quote. Let's keep this message in mind. Helping others via Avnei Chen is a win-win-win. That's 3 wins. It helps others. In doing so, it helps ourselves. In doing so, we are helping Am Yisrael. And I was planning on ending, and I guess Hillel Fuld built me to it. I was planning on ending with Am Yisrael Chai. Wishing all of us shalom, peace. Thank you for joining us tonight.